Okay. We are live streaming, I do believe. Hello, everybody. We've not let anybody into our audience yet, so it's an exclusive. We're here behind the scenes getting ready for the May edition. Oh, there's people starting to come in. That's good. That's good. We're all starting. Hey, it's May, and it's time for PMO. Whoosh! It's that time again. It's the last Friday in the month. Woohoo! Which means for a lot of people it's payday. So I'm sure you're all very happy about that. But thanks for joining us again. We've got myself, I'm Lindsay. We've got John. You all right,
Hi
John?
everyone. Hi there.
Um, Eileen.
Hi.
Hello. So between the three of us, we've got a packed session today. Lots of stuff to share with you. So let's crack on, shall we? Yeah. So straight over to John with the latest roundup of PMO news. This is a section of the show that everybody seems to enjoy this. So, and I know you do, John, because it gives you an excuse to make sure that you're up on stuff. So, please do take it away.
Fantastic. Right, let's dive in. So the first one, SpaceX is the first thing in the news. So they've had yet another oops moment, shall we say, with one of their rockets unexpectedly crashing down. But I just thought it was a good opportunity to encourage you all to look at stories like this and look at them with your PMO hat on and think about lessons we can learn from them, because a few things that they're doing really well on this. So they tend to think of these failures as successful failures. They are high risk activities. Launching a rocket is high risk. They've done it iteratively. They were very clear with their first one that they fully expected it to crash, but they were going to generate learning from it. So a few key things that we picked up out of this one. Firstly, setting those expectations in advance when you're doing something risky is vital. So there's no surprises when it happens. I was working with a client on a website migration recently. We had a window in for the migration to happen, and there's a lot of work with stakeholders telling them that actually, whilst we're aiming to do it first time, it is likely that it might be the second or third attempt that we get it done. So we've got other windows in. So there were no surprises and no disappointment when it didn't happen first time, and we got it there the second time around. Highlighting the positives and learning out of those failures. So don't focus on it going wrong. Focus on what we've learned from it, what we can take ahead, how it makes us stronger, and how it drives us forwards. And the last one that is reminding people of the BHAG, those who aren't familiar with that term, the big, hairy, audacious goal that you're going for. So don't focus on this individual failure. Look at the big picture and where we're going and the direction that we're traveling in. So if you look at the next slide there, what I've just highlighted here is what SpaceX actually said about it themselves. Their statement summarized that, well, they said, if a test flight wasn't exciting enough, Starship experienced a rapid unscheduled disassembly before stage separation. So it wasn't a failure at all. It was a rapid unscheduled disassembly. There's a phrase you may want to take away and use on your projects in the future. None of your projects are failures anymore. They just have rapid unscheduled disassembly. But then they went on, the teams will continue to review data and work towards the next flight. So we're carrying on. They noted that success comes from what they're learning, and they're reinforcing the wider goal, improving Starship's reliability as we seek to make life multiplanetary. And finally, of course, thanking the team that got involved. So quite a good playbook coming out of them there on how you handle those successful failures on your iterative projects. Diving straight on, we're going to stay in the US because this was a publication that came out from the US Government of Accountability. So quite a lot of stuff in the news coming out of the US at the moment. Thanks to Mr. Trump. But what we've got here is an interesting report that might be interesting for PMO people to have a look at. The paper was titled Opportunities to Reduce Fragmentation, Overlap, and Duplication and Achieve an Additional $100 billion or more in future financial benefits. Those of you who are enterprise PMOs, just think for a second. If your PMO published not just your regular reporting, but suddenly dropped a paper out to your exec with opportunities to reduce fragmentation, overlap, and duplication in our portfolios, coupled with the and achieve a relevant amount of savings and benefits in your organization, how would that reflect in your PMO and how would that help the organization go forwards? We'll come back to that in a news bit later on as well. But some of the things that they came out with there was reducing duplication across IT portfolios, the space-based lasers. They wanted more iterative development on that. So let's do small incremental steps to demonstrate the value of this project, assuming there is some. They wanted alignment of design standards, noting different areas have got different design standards. They could save a lot of money by standardizing. And they were advocating killing projects off with a specific one they reckon would save billions and work at the Hanford waste energy site. Stop the project until the issues are resolved, and then let's look at it again. It's worth a look. Their methodologies in there, what they've done, they go through the detail of where they see those savings and laying them out nice and clearly. And I challenge you to think about, as you read it, have a think about how you could do something similar for your organizations to help drive them forward and help drive strategic savings. There was a 2025 report from PM Solutions up next, the 2025 State of the Project Management Office. A lot of insight in there. This is basically research. They've done questionnaires out to a lot of PMO people. They've sliced and diced the data they've got back and shared that. They've done this for a few years, so it's quite interesting to see how things differ. It opens up in a pleasing way, noting that PMOs continue to be strategic powerhouses, which I love. That's quite nice. It gives you a nice warm, fuzzy feeling as you dive into it as a PMO person. Quite a few key takeaways in there. Operating costs of PMOs seem to be quite stable. They haven't really changed over the years. The average size of a PMO they've looked at is 8, but perceived value is continuing to increase. So the value that people perceive from their PMOs is increasing, even though the costs are staying the same, which is fantastic news. So delivering more. I know you don't like value add as a term, Lindsay, but continuing to deliver value to the organizations that they operate in. I'm noticing that high performing PMOs, those that were identified as high performers, one of the key things they did was offer roadmaps to organizational improvement. So whilst a lot of them were focusing on project maturity, both high end and low end PMOs saw that as a really, really important things to do, but also looking at how they can support organizational improvement, which links quite nicely back to the report I shared from the GAO just now, looking at things from a project lens, absolutely, the wider portfolio, but also how can we be driving organizational improvement across the business. Challenges, two major ones that cropped up: misalignment of the PMO. This is how we got a highly performing PMO with a low performing organization, high maturity versus low maturity, and the same true in reverse there as well. And a big challenge for everybody was portfolio prioritization is a big one that everyone sees challenges with. How always too many projects and always not quite enough resource to do it, and then working that through with stakeholders to align everybody around it. One thing I did pull out, which was the next one though, Lindsay, quite a few people going out to external providers for a PMO support, project management as a service, outsourcing that, and also looking to organizations for support and guidance with their PMO as well, which is an opportunity for a shameless plug for me. If any of you are looking to go down this road, do give us a shout at Hot PMO. We do this with organizations at the moment. And if you're looking for this kind of service, either somebody's coming and look at what you're doing and assess your alignment with the organization, or to outsource some elements of PMO for individual programs or whatever, then do give me a shout, because it's what we do day in, day out. Enough of the plug for me. Let's move swiftly on. Shameless. I see Alan laughing there. Shameless, shameless, I know. Right, let's move on. Okay, in the journal, so the project management journal this month is looking at innovation in the PMO. There's quite a few things in there. I've just pulled this one article out, bridging project management and design thinking. We talked about design thinking on here before, Double Diamond and all those kind of things that I think some of you are familiar with. But this is quite a nice study for those of you that are interested in design thinking and innovation in project management. They take you through quite a very, very detailed case study of how design thinking is being linked to project management in Air France and what they've done. Big wins for them were deep stakeholder alignment and buy-in right from the start. Problem framing, they found it really, really useful for that to reduce ambiguity. Once you get a clear problem statement, it goes a long way to solving the problem that you have. If you can clearly define a problem, you've got a much better chance of solving it than if you aren't able to define it and get to an agreed definition. They also found it really good for unblocking stalled initiatives, so things that weren't moving. And they found actually they could do that by using design thinking techniques in their projects, resolving that a lot more effectively with internal people rather than getting external consultants in to try and help them unblock those. So they found it really, really good for that as well. They proposed a four-stage method, which aligns with what design thinking normally does. But again, you can see there a big emphasis on stakeholder identification and getting them immersed in the project and getting them buy-in. A lot of time on project framing and success criteria alignment, which is something that quite often gets kind of done on the back of a fag packet in the corner of Teams, and people get told what the frame is and told what the success criteria are. They make that a big focus in the early phase of their projects. Co-creation workshops and rapid feedback by doing a lot of low fidelity prototyping for them with planes. That was a lot of sort of wooden models and things before they go on something else. But the same holds true with software and other types of projects that we all do as well. It's an easy read, and it's a really good case study in how they've done it as well. So if you're interested in integrating design thinking and innovation, that's a good one to look at. Again, I'll share links in the chat afterwards. And onwards, what have we got? What have we got? What have we got? I think the last one was this one. There's a wall of stuff here. This is really just to say that AI still is continuing to dominate some of the news that's out there from all angles. APM, they've got blog posts in there about the AI powered PMO. In the report from PM Solutions that I mentioned earlier, they're picking up that more than 36% of organizations with PMOs are using AI supported practices now, and 61% of the high performing ones are using AI supported practices as well. There's research going on everywhere. The government have launched an AI Insight series, which is aimed at people in government organizations, but they're looking at how people can be using AI and dropping in case studies and things there that are designed to help people in government use AI more effectively. There's two bits of research that, again, I'll share links to there. One is assessment of how the challenges of getting conversational AI into construction projects, starting with small ones there. And the one that you can just see on the right, if you've got a magnifying glass there, is looking at how AI can be used to improve story point estimation in software development. Spoiler alert, it can and it does massively improve the quality of story point estimation for those of you working with agile teams. So lots of stuff there, a busy month as ever, lot to get your head around. I will share some links in the chat. As always, if you've seen something in the news that I haven't picked up on, do share it with me because I love to read it. There's a question that's just popped up from Alan in chat for those of you that have joined the Zoom call. And for those of you, by the way, that listen regularly online through YouTube or LinkedIn, if you do sign up for this on the House of PMO website, you get a link to the Zoom chat where you kind of on the inner circle where we can see what you're saying as you're typing it there. But are you using AI and are you allowed to use AI? That is a challenge for some organizations where they're finding that because of the work they do, the nature of things, where AI is not allowed at all in some organizations, some restrict what you are allowed to use it for, and there's various different guidance. I would say for those of you that are in an organization that is not allowing AI at all, for your personal development, I would say it is worth you looking at this outside of work and understanding what's going on. Because as you saw there, with 61% of high performing PMOs using it, it is something that if you're not using it in your PMO now, it will almost certainly be in the next PMO role you go into, and it's something that you want to be able to talk about in terms of your skills and competencies going forwards. That's it from me, I think. If there's anything that you've spotted that I haven't, do send it over because I love to read and I hate missing out on things.
Yeah, well, there you go. We'll definitely push some your way because I've seen one new report as well this month, but we'll pick it up for next month. Okay, all right, super. Thanks very much, John. Some sushi chat as well about the old AI stuff going on, but let's move on. Little quick section. Eileen, you've been out and about.
I know what I did. We'll just move off John off because John's not talking to this. Yes, no, I did my first ever trip over to the Middle East this time, and I was as Alberto's on the line. Alberto will tell you I have been nervous about going over to the Middle East for kind of various reasons. But I went over to the Global Project Management Forum. I ran a workshop. I did some speaking. Also, I had some lovely fun signing the competency framework, which was quite a very weird experience. But I had the most amazing time over there. And what was really interesting was they have lots of the same challenges. So there was quite a few people there. Right, I've been talking all that time unmuted. There we go. Now unmuted. Welcome, world. Yes. So I went over to the Global Project Management Forum in Riyadh. I can't think it was last weekend and the weekend before. And all of that time I've been quite nervous about going over to the Middle East. So it was my very first visit. I was accompanied by Alberto, who looked after me very well while I was there. But I actually had generally a fantastic time. We ran a workshop and we did a talk and we kind of did some networking. And it was interesting to see that they've got, interestingly, all of the same issues from us. So even though we had a lot of construction people there, it was still an awful lot of kind of people-based delivery. So some of the challenges around kind of actually dealing with real people, their motivation, ethics and culture issues. And interesting though, there was quite a bit on AI, but they also talked about kind of the people issue side of that and the ethical issue side of that. So if anybody wants to kind of go and have a look at not just at my sessions, anybody's sessions, all of it is recorded. Well, not necessarily all of the little workshops, but stuff in the main room. Let me just put that in chat. Stuff in the main room is all recorded, and just the sheer scale of it was quite amazing. Definitely sensory overload, but great time, and hopefully we'll get to go back another time.
Okay, super duper. And another out and about really, it was International PMO Day and it seemed to do really well. Again, I think it was the third year. So it's definitely in people's calendars, which is some super pictures being shared and stuff. I just don't know if you were aware that House of PMO was one of the founders alongside some of the other, people, like Laura and Americo and Leo and Joe House of PMO does a lot of the social media stuff behind it, so we get to see pretty much everything that was going on. And so this is for future reference. 12th of May next year. I do tend to favour the retweets that have cake. So if you're wanting to become famous on the old International PMO Day website, you'll be able to see the gallery, by the way. If you head over into their website, internationalpmoday.com, look at the gallery, you'll be able to see some of the pictures and things of people around the world, which is just great. I mean, you consider, where we've been in the last, few years, and for this to take on, such people are picking it up. Their organisations are aware that their PMOs are celebrating this. It gives their PMOs something to talk to their organisations about, that there is a day around this. And we still see people saying, what? There's an actual day to celebrate PMOs. And it gives PMO people the opportunity to go back and say, yes, absolutely it does. And here's what we're doing. So, yeah, great to see it, being picked up and being celebrated in the way that it was intended, which is just people people just sharing what it is that they do in their everyday lives and, sharing pictures of their lovely teams. So that's it, out and about, and let's move on because we've got a busy agenda. So just a quick break. To have a little tiny break. Just a couple of things that we want to bring to your attention. Yes, it's that conference. We keep cracking on, banging on about it. You're not going to be able to hear anything else about it come the 13th of June when it's all over. But there are last few tickets available, and just to let you know that, and you can head over there. And there's still, I think there's 3 places left for that Impact Engine session as well on the last day. So, and the other thing is to let you know that we're coming up with our new summer series this year. Something that we've done in the past, just something slightly different, something probably on a smaller scale because people are away on holiday. But we wanted to focus on the PMO skills that are in the competency framework, which are presenting and communication, which essentially has led us to think about, well, actually, there's probably a little series here about, do you want to get better at presenting? And we also want you to get better at presenting. So we've come up with a series of 3 different sessions that will be taking place in July and August, which will be focusing on how to present with confidence. There'll be more news about that next week, but just a little pre-ad that it's coming your way. And if you're not already in our LinkedIn group, House of PMO LinkedIn, you'll see that we posted about that in there as well, and some really positive feedback on that. So yeah, it's good. I think it's a good idea. Should be good fun. So let's move on, and dragon busting. Over to you, Eileen.
Okay, so I'm unmuted, everybody. Everybody can hear me? Excellent. Do you know, I actually do this for a living, shouldn't I? So what I thought, we've got Steve Jenner, who we're going to talk to in a couple of minutes. But I just thought I would have a quick summary of the various portfolio management techs that are in and around the place. They've been around for a while. And there's various kind of qualifications. So I'm not going to kind of go into each into depth, but certainly kind of hopefully enough just to give you an insight into kind of the differences between them. So the one that is the oldest that is still current, if that makes sense, is that it is the 2011 one, which Steve Jenner was a contributor to, which was primarily led by Craig Kilford in the management of portfolio. So Stephen was heavily involved in that first one. It's still, it's owned by Axelos. It is been around since 14 years. Can you believe it, Stephen? 14 years since that's been kind of published. And there's an examination via Axelos, or people say it as it now is, if you wanted to do that. The second publication I'm just going to touch on is the PMI standard for portfolio management. Now, they originally brought out their very first one in 2006, so they're up to their 4th edition, which is now kind of was brought out in 2017. That also is linked to a certification of a project portfolio professional. And then the third book I'm just going to touch on is, it's really interesting when they come up, when you kind of put these pictures up. It really is only a very thin booklet as opposed to a book. But APM did one on portfolio management. It's not got a team kind of an easy plan. And then the final one, which is we're going to talk to Steve about in a moment, is the one that was released last year. So not to be confused with management of portfolios. This is managing portfolios, very much like the managing benefits book, which was also written by Steve. So I just did a quick kind of flick through. If we go to the next slide, Lindsay, we're just going to go through what I look for was kind of the 3 definitions. When I first started out kind of doing project program management and training and what have you, there was lots of disagreement around what a portfolio was. Everybody had kind of slightly different wording. What's been really interesting is that everybody now kind of is almost there in terms of the same language. So I looked at portfolio management, and I also looked at a bit of kind of PMO just out of curiosity. So back to kind of the totality, it's not just talking about kind of projects and program, it's investment in change. And in 2011, we had a coordinated collection of strategic processes and decisions about that balance of organisation change and business as usual. Interestingly, at that point, although it talks about strategic processes, not a huge amount in terms of kind of the word strategy. In the book, it talks a lot more about that, but it's not actually there in the definition of portfolio management. And the PMO, obviously aligned to the rest of the Axelos products, talks about a P3O structure, which is a decision enabling and support business models. So that's where we were with the definitions. If we go on to the PMI one, again, you'll see there's a lot of kind of a similarity in the words, but we've already got this kind of subsidiary portfolios now. So you've got subsidiary portfolios in a portfolio. And I think we do talk about sometimes kind of breaking the portfolios down into several different portfolios. But this is where we've got kind of managed as a group to achieve strategic objectives, which you can argue kind of overlies a bit with a definition of a program. And their portfolio management is about the centralized management of those portfolios to achieve strategic objectives. So very much kind of focusing now on the kind of the strategy and having some kind of central way of doing that. And they talk about PMO for responsible for that kind of centralized management and coordination. So really interesting one in terms of kind of where it sees the PMO. The next one in terms of the APM, they have a collection of projects and programs, kind of really the typical and kind of management investments. And I'm going to come back onto that management investments with a question I'm going to ask Steve. And again, we're here optimizing strategic benefits or operational activity. And I would argue kind of operational activities there to drive strategy and to support strategy as well. Portfolio management, they've kind of just pulled out a couple of the activities in terms of the definition, selection, prioritization, and control in line with the strategic objectives and deliver. And they have what was really interesting back in 2011. Didn't have a definition of the PMO in the body of knowledge, but they did have one in the program management guide, which is an organizational structure that provides support for projects, programs, and portfolios, which is very much aligned to kind of where we sit with the House of PMO. And then finally, in terms of the final kind of managing portfolios guide, we've got, again, it kind of brings together all of the thinking. So it is about that investment, and it talks about it at kind of different levels now. So it's not just kind of at organizational level, but it's also at the functional level, again, about optimizing benefits and operational activity. Very similar in terms of the portfolio management. And what I found really interesting about the management portfolios, and we're going to have a conversation, Steve, about this. PMO is not defined in the glossary, though it is mentioned throughout and plays a key role in supporting delivery. But in the glossary, there is something called a value management office, which is about either a benefits realization office or a kind of strategic management office. Then finally, and I'm running out of time because I need to give Steve some talk, so we're going to just rattle through these. All I've got is just kind of some information there in terms of kind of the high level model. So from an Axelos perspective, we've got kind of 5 principles in that and supports this kind of, is it a helix driven by organizational energy, which looks at kind of
infinity symbol.
Pardon?
It was the infinity symbol.
Infinity symbol, that's right.
Yeah.
That looks at portfolio definition and portfolio delivery. Next one in terms of the PMI one. Interestingly, their kind of high level model is circular, but doesn't actually kind of contain anything that's kind of in there. So they've got 8 principles, which are just kind of lost in the text somewhere, but what they call 6 performance domains, and then this kind of circular portfolio life cycle. APM have got a very kind of simplified, and this is where you realize, and we've had this thing with doing the circle of resource management, having a good diagram speaks wonders, because that I would suggest is probably not the best diagram. But they have kind of 6 core processes that need to be undertaken through the portfolio management. What I do like about this, which I don't think is mentioned anything else, is this concept of a portfolio entry criteria. but more interesting for me is a portfolio exit criteria. So I quite like that. And then in Steve's model, and interestingly, Steve couldn't find this diagram anywhere on the interweb. I had to take a photograph out of the book because I do have all of the textbooks. I had to take a photograph out of the book. So in the new version, or the kind of the new released book, Managing Portfolios, we have this concept of kind of 5 principles, which are executive engagement, strategic clarity, effective governance, setting up to succeed in collaborative culture. And I've mentioned those for a specific reason. And then you've got 6 practices around portfolio design and 6 practices around portfolio delivery. So very much kind of on a kind of a similar theme, but I think there's some kind of subtle differences between the 2, or between the 4 of them. So I just wanted to kind of, Steve's here. Thank you very much for joining us, Steve. Lindsay will kind of put you in the spotlight any minute.
No problem.
Absolutely. So we do indeed. He's already been chirping, so that's good. We like him. He's not waiting for his hot
Can't keep me
seat.
quiet.
We've got Steve with us. Steve joined us in Edinburgh last year and did a fantastic keynote. Great speaker as ever. Lots of great ideas. But yeah, I'm just going to hand you back over to Eileen, and yeah, please take it away in the hot seat.
You can remove the spotlight from me and put it on Steve. He's going to be answering the questions. So interesting, Steve, in terms of there's lots of portfolio guides out there. Why did we need it? Why did we need another one?
Yeah, absolutely. Why? And well, a lot of I used to get lots of emails from people saying, "Look, are you and Craig? Are you going to do an update? Are you going to do a new guide?" And I said, you know, wild horses couldn't drag me there. I'm done. That's it. No more. I've written 5 or 6 books. That's it. And then, of course, that sows the seed, and you start thinking, well, there was stuff in MOP that both Craig and I didn't like, stuff that we wanted to take out, but for whatever reason we couldn't. There was stuff that we didn't include. It was a very high-level guide, MOP, at the time. I should mention also I was the chief examiner for the MOP scheme, so anyone that has to sit those exams, you can blame me for that. But they were of the time. So in short, I increasingly became convinced it was, you know, the world had moved on. The PMI, not only that guide that you highlighted, the standard, but a whole series of thought leadership papers that really are very good. And a lot of stuff from the APM, in addition to that little, as you say, more a pamphlet than a. No, that's unfair, but not a tome, not a good stuff in there. But also people like yourselves have been publishing in this space, a lot of thought leaders worldwide, and so I thought there was an opportunity to try to consolidate, bring it up to date, fill in the gaps, the stuff that we didn't cover in MOP, we could include in managing portfolios. I should say Craig has been involved with managing portfolios. And
it is about twice the size of the MOP guide, isn't it? The new
it's about double. There's APMG have got a qualification called half double, and I was using that as part of marketing. I said we've got double the content for half the price. And the same applies, I say, to the exam scheme, because the idea, I've been an examiner with APMG for quite some time. I was the chief examiner for MOP. I became increasingly convinced we don't need 2 exams. We don't need a 3-hour practitioner. We don't need all those questions that are a little bit like angel on pinheads. You know, can you remember their formal definition on page, 84?
Oh, yes, the level 1 questions.
Simplifying it, consolidating it, 1 exam, shorter, and trying to get rid of the less important. So focus and focus on the important stuff. So that was the thinking. That was the thinking behind the guide, and as I said, then the exam scheme in due course.
So there's one of the things that we've definitely seen since your kind of previous contribution into this area is the fact that, as I mentioned when I talked through those kind of different models, is there's definitely the focus from just delivering projects and programs to absolute alignment with strategy and to kind of delivering on that investment that the organization is making. and what we found is investment now is made not just in a kind of a project management element, but also in kind of in various kind of guises and frameworks that sit within the organization. So how much of kind of the whole portfolio management theory needs to change to take in all of those kind of that wide investment?
Well, in a way, I don't think it's a major issue. On the other hand, it is quite an important issue. So let's first of all say why it's not a major issue. I think what it is, it's the PMI talks about other related work, I think, managing portfolios, we use that term. I think the IPA used that term. I think the APM refers to it. And I think it's just that awareness that not all change is delivered by formally constituted projects and programs, that other stuff goes on. And that you can't, if you're saying, well, we're focusing on strategic objective, and we used to have this in criminal justice, we would say, we're going to deliver X amount of benefit, and then some copper somewhere launched a local scheme and he wiped those benefits out because he improved things overnight. Just stop it, stop improving things, because that's our job. And so it's saying it's really important for these projects and programs, if you've got to focus on benefits and a focus on strategy, that we say, well, look, we need to take into consideration any other initiatives that are undertaken, maybe not by formally constituted projects and programs. So it's that trying to capture that that wider perspective, and that kind of touches on something I was going to talk to later, which was the shift, I think, or greater awareness of what the PMI says, that stakeholder engagement from a portfolio perspective is, quote, a strategic exercise or a strategic practice. It's not something you do just to try to keep the suckers on side. It's not something you do to stop them complaining. It's something you do because, and this is why I was talking to Mike Clayton recently, and he's posed the question. He said, so why should project managers be interested? Because portfolio management shouldn't be something that's done to them. This is about engaging stakeholders in a mutual exploration of how we can ensure the portfolio and portfolio management operate effectively.
And I think that kind of leads on to kind of another question that I wanted to ask. From a PMO perspective, we do like a bit of process and procedure.
Yeah.
And it's quite easy to focus on the practices of prioritization and scheduling and all of those kind of things. But the underlying principles that I mentioned are essentially behaviors and culture. And I'm just there's two questions. One is, can you do successful portfolio management without that? And if you can't, how can the PMO support embedding those principles in an organization?
Well, you said, can it succeed without the principles? Well, yes, it can, but it means it won't be sustainable, because it means it's just dependent upon people, the people there that, if Steve does it, Eileen does it. What happens when we move on? No one wants to do what Steve did. No one wants to do what Eileen did. There's people come in, they want to do their own thing. So it's the issue of sustainability. Let's not diss process. Process is incredibly important. If you haven't got a process, you haven't got well, it's the first building block. And I'm actually doing some advice with an organization in the Middle East you were mentioning. At the moment, I got something this morning, and basically it's saying in every area, nothing is written down. There's no formalized process. Well, got a bit of a problem, because what are we assessing? Having said that, so the line I take in managing portfolios, and with Craig as well, is that this is about process, it's about governance, and you mentioned culture. It's about culture. But if you ask people, what do you mean by culture? They say, well, it's the way we do things around here. Well, if you want to change the culture, change the way you do things. And so process is an integral part, but it won't work if you don't have the governance, and it won't work if you don't have the culture. And so it's this mutually supportive kind of the three legs of the stool, governance, culture, and process, all supporting each other. If you try to do one, you can't do the principles of the culture without doing the governance. So if you've got a process, you've got a governance model that ensures that process is complied with and people don't bypass it, because you set the process. Bob Cooper said, the difference between the winners and the losers is everyone does portfolio management, but the winners are consistent. They stick to their rules. Most organizations struggle. People bypass the process. I was doing a session with working with one of the most, an organization that's won that award in Dubai, that conference. They won the award there. They were up on stage, everyone standing applauding them. And I did some work with them, and one of their guys leaned over and he said, "Steve, it's like Game of Thrones around here. All the senior managers are stabbing each other in the book." If you like this stuff, it's in the book, by the way. But I don't say who it was, but they're stabbing each other in the book. So this was a hugely successful portfolio management office, won international awards in a major multinational corporation. And despite those processes, somehow the culture was very much, stabbing each other in the back. So, and that, as I say at the beginning of the book, actually, this is why the book. Well, from an intellectual perspective, because it's important, because this is about closing the project delivery gap, but also closing the strategy execution gap. It's important, but two, it's bloody difficult. This is not easy because these aren't bad people stabbing each other in the back. It's the nature of organizations. If your organization is framed and structured in silos with silo-based objectives, it's very difficult for portfolio management or the PMO to come in and say, "Come on, guys." I was sitting with an organization in Australia. They had the board up on the screen. We were in Sydney, I think, and they had the screen with all the board in Melbourne. And this guy said, I was talking about portfolios, and this guy next to me said, "I'm not going to help them. It's not my job to help them. I'm not going to lift a finger to help them. My job is to deliver my division's objectives." And no one on the board said a word. There you go. So if that's the nature, it's very. So then I think we have to take incremental steps. The whole point is, I think when we did portfolio, you say how can we make that difference? I think you do what you can in your environment. You've got to, as a portfolio officer, try to keep the long game in mind. And I remember someone saying, we did this stuff, we did this stuff, we did this stuff, but we didn't call it portfolio management. And suddenly, after about 2 years, one of the senior managers said, "This is portfolio management, isn't it?" So we said, "Oh, right." And so the portfolio manager had the long-term game. There was no centralized plan of how we were going to get from here to there, but they were continually, I think that's the key, continual improvement. Not looking for, we're in a bad place, 6 months' time, we reach nirvana. This is not, a change program where you say, bad place, what's the blueprint? We'll implement it, and the sunshine and the birds sing. I think this is about continuous improvement because there will always be those challenges that we face. Oh, are you there, Eileen? Come on, Eileen.
Yeah, she disappeared too.
We've lost Eileen.
I think so. Well, I can still see her on the thing on the side. Did she ask the question why PMO didn't exist in your book?
It does exist in the book, and it exists throughout the book. What I said was, shoot the index write-out. This is something that TSO do, and I had a few issues with the way they did the index. But yeah, it's not so. But there are battles you fight, and the battles Liz. There are battles you don't fight, and the battles you do fight. That's an analogy for the PMO there. But go to the contents page. Go to go to the index. It's in the index. It's not in the glossary. I think that was it. But it's throughout the guide. But the guide it's like MOP. It's less about the portfolio management office, and it's more about portfolio management generically, and therefore it's about what the PMO will do and how they should do it, and what does research say are the most effective methods to apply. So I would on the one hand blame TSO for the overlooking
explain the publisher
terminology. But there's whole sections on specific, because from a governance, where does the PMO sit in that governance chain? And I was doing a session with Stuart Easton, and he was saying, "Don't you think the PMO should do this, take responsibility for this?" I said, "No, I don't actually." And there's a whole load of issues, because if you say the portfolio only consists of projects and plus the other stuff, but let's put the other stuff aside, and the the sponsor is accountable and the project managers are responsible, then what's the people that I was talking to some guys recently, they said, oh, the portfolio director is a single point of accountability. I said, accountability for what? If you've got 20 projects in your portfolio and every one of those projects has got someone who is personally accountable, please tell me what's left. And so you have to say, well, okay, and so you have to, and clearly you think through what exactly what are we accountable for? We're about enabling those people that are accountable to remove the barriers to delivery, to make sure we're doing the right things, that we do them at the right time, because as John Doerr at OKR, and this is one of the things about managing portfolios. So you look at the PMI guide and it says PMI says. You look at the APM guide, it says APM says. You know, most books that you read, it says, you know, Joe says. I want to put summarize there. What does the PMI say? What does the APM say? What do Lindsay and Eileen say? What does Steve say? What does Craig say? But so it's trying to show you the kind of the overall picture, you know, the views from various perspectives, at where there is that consistent acceptance of what good looks like.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about kind of PMOs. Sorry, I've lost my camera, but I can put
Back
voice.
again. There we go.
We've talked a lot about kind of PMOs moving up to this kind of strategic level. And are you kind of seeing that replicated by kind of more career opportunities and taking a bigger role in advice and guidance to the organization?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the guidance that's issued, you know, transformation office, strategy delivery office, value management office, benefit real. Don't be a PMO. Ooh, that's last year. You want to be a VMO or a SMO, whatever. Well, from one aspect, that's just changing the name. But what it does do, it highlights there is this general, and you're quoting from those definitions at the beginning, Eileen. Absolutely, you know, collection, portfolio is a collection of what? Projects, programs, and other stuff. But the focus of it is on strategic objectives, or at least a subset of strategic objectives we want the portfolio to deliver. So it has to be that the focus of the PMO has to be, number one, focusing on strategy. Now, what does that mean? Or strategic objectives? That means, ultimately, what does the PMI say? Project benefits are synonymous with positive strategic impacts. So the measures of strategic success are your benefits at a portfolio level. And there's the analogy here, as I say in the guide, to OKRs, objectives, key results, initiatives. So you prioritize your objectives, focus on the most important stuff, identify the key results, and then you commission your projects and programs to deliver the key results and therefore achieve your objectives. Used by, you know, originated in Intel, Google, Netflix, Samsung, people like that.
So one more question, Steve. I'm just conscious it's 1 o'clock, and I knew we could kind of talk for an hour. One question then, in terms of it's been 14 years since the original management of portfolios to this new extended one. We know that things change. What's your vision for the next 5 to 10 years? What's going to be in the next book?
Well, I can't predict the future. I can't predict tomorrow, let alone. But in the book, we've got a section at the end saying the future is now. And what I tried to do was hand it over to 11 people talking about in certain key areas where what's coming. And it's not just coming, it's here. So there are chapters on, or articles there on, clearly on Agile and the implications for portfolio management Agile. I think that's going to be, is and will remain a shift. Artificial intelligence, the AI is as you were saying earlier, is the hot topic. My concern is people kind of default to, oh, we'll solve everything with AI. You know, we used to say technology, IT will solve all our problems. Then we discovered it wouldn't. Now I think we're going to make the same mistake again. It's a tool. A fool with a tool is still a fool. I think it's about, the future should be about intelligent use of tools, whether it's AI, whether it's just generic software. Intelligent use of the tools, the appropriate tools to the right environment. And the third area, which it's much less focused, but is so important, sustainability. And this is not about, you know, 10 years ago, I think we were very much about, if you said sustainability, it was like, okay, so you amend the project slightly to be, you know, to recycle some paper and, you know, that kind of stuff. No, it's about building sustainability into your project, not mitigating the negative effects, but actually building sustainability into your projects and programs and into your therefore into your portfolio. But from a portfolio, the portfolio taking the lead in promoting more sustainable practices. So I think that there's a great article, I say, by David Smythe in Managing Portfolios about that very issue. So if
Brilliant.
anyone wants any of this stuff, if you ping me a note, I can cut and paste from my draft and send it to you. So
Excellent, excellent. Well, I will be following up because that's a great session, and I want also to we'll be sharing the session you did at the conference too. So I just want to say thank you very much to Steve. Great as ever. You're always great at bringing a subject to life. So we just want to just follow up right now with it's nearly time, for the conference. It's going to be a fantastic few days as we celebrate 10 years of PMO conference. And so just thanks again to Steve. Thank you, John. Thank you, Eileen. We'll be back next month and probably with the show gossip. Until then, thanks for your time. Take care. Bye-bye.